Why does the Toyota RAV4 sell so well in the United States? I'm going to try and answer that question for you in this series of 2022 RAV4 TRD off-road videos I'm going to be making, because that is the vehicle I'm testing right now, finished in Calvary Blue, as you can see. A new color for 2022. But that's besides the point. Speed probably isn't the primary motive for people purchasing a new RAV4, but let's talk about what is, and that is going to be the overall brand reputation that Toyota has built for themselves. You can't deny it, people just put a lot of faith and a lot of trust into this brand. And that came with obviously decades of making quality products, but it's here, they have it, people love the brand. This logo is the symbol of reliability for many people. And with that comes great resale value as well. I do believe that Honda is the other brand that has achieved the exact same credibility and trust from the automotive buyers as Toyota. But the RAV4 sells about 400,000 units per year and has been selling about 400,000+ units since 2017. So for the past 5 years, this has been a complete success. And I think this one model out of the entire Toyota lineup outsells Mazda as an entire company. That's how much of a success this really is. Other things, many people have really liked this new redesign. The RAV4 was completely redesigned in 2019. This pulls off that rugged persona extremely well. However, I will say this, in 2019, when I tested the RAV4 for the first time, I wasn't super impressed with it. There was a crazy amount of wind noise with it, and I didn't think the stability out on the highway was quite that amazing. But that's the thing about Toyota, they do gradually improve their vehicles year after year. I mean, yeah, the vehicle looks exactly the same as it did since 2019, but this is 2022, and pretty much all my issues have been resolved for the most part. There's no longer this ridiculous hissing effect coming from the windows. It's just a very normal wind buffeting effect that you get at speed, which just about every normal car has that in this price category. And despite being the TRD off-road variant, there isn't a crazy amount of tire noise coming from this vehicle either. And most importantly, the stability is good. And let's talk about the overall just driving dynamics. This isn't quite best in class at really anything. Okay, this isn't quite the best riding, this is not the best handling, it's not the quietest. However, it's good enough in all of these areas. It's a good all-rounder, and I think that's one of the main reasons why it just makes sense for so many families. I think something like a CR-V would handle better than this. I think the CX-5 is a little bit quieter and a little bit more elegant than this, but that's honestly irrelevant, especially in a country like the United States where driving is seen as a chore. Nobody really cares about driving that much. And the fact that this does a good enough job is, well, quite frankly, good enough for most people. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying this is bad. I mean, this genuinely has a good handling demeanor to it. It remains neutral when you take left-hand turns, right-hand turns. It never feels like it's about to flip over. The occupants remain neutral in it. Nobody's like falling on top of each other. The ride quality is actually great 99% of the times. It's only over the sharper bumps where you kind of feel it a little bit. You might feel a tad bit of a jiggle, whereas something like a CX-5 might soak it out completely. But again, that's not really a big deal because it rides great, again, 90+% of the time. And they don't use double pane glass, so there's a little bit more wind buffeting than you would probably get in something like a CX-5 Mazda, but again, not a big deal. It's not going to be a deal breaker for anyone. The things that matter, of course, like the fuel economy, is here, and Toyota offers multiple different drivetrain options. Even this regular 2.5-liter 4-cylinder gets amazing fuel economy in the real world, mind you. It's rated to get around 25 in the city, 32 on the highway. It will absolutely do that. If you hypermile it, you can probably beat those EPA estimates. Plus, there's the hybrid model that you can get, and that's definitely the model that I recommend most people. If you can buy this car at MSRP, I would definitely get an XLE hybrid for around $32,000, $33,000. That is definitely the way to go. and that'll net you about 40 mpg both in the city and the highway, which is about a 15 mpg gain in the city and about a 10 mpg gain in the highway. So that's just fantastic. A reasonable price. Now I get it, $30,000+ for a car, even $26,000 starting is actually pretty expensive for most families that live just paycheck to paycheck in the United States. But most people that buy a new car anyway, they typically have dual incomes. They're married, they make decent money. I think the average income of a new Toyota buyer is around $65,000, maybe $67,000. Again, it's going to take that dual income, but people who buy stuff like this, they're going to keep their cars for 10 years. And that's why reliability is such a big deal for them, because they need a car that works. And Toyotas just have that track record of working. Now, I admit, you know, there are obviously people that own Toyotas and have had issues. Like, I know a guy who owned like a '09 Corolla, which was brand new at the time, and the transmission blew out on him. So, you know, anything can happen to any vehicle, but if you look at it like that, then nobody would own any car ever. So because Toyota has that track record, people typically buy something like this new, keep it for 10, 15 years, and then they go to sell it. And because Toyotas have that brand cachet associated with them for being a good quality product, they tend to have good resale value as well. This new redesigned RAV4 is actually pretty damn spacious in here as well. I think it's one of the larger ones in the class. I think the Forester, the Subaru Forester, has a little bit more trunk space in this. But for the most part, again, it comes back to this being a great all-rounder. It's good enough for most families. It's like that jack-of-all-trades type vehicle. It has a more ruggedized interior space, so it's going to kind of stand the test of time, if you will. I believe if you opt for these rubber floor mats from the factory, it'll actually cover up the rear seats as well, the back of the rear seats. So when you put them down, you don't ruin them when you put larger objects back there. So that's pretty smart. And mainly when you look at things like the fuel economy of the hybrid models, even the regular model here, when you buy a Toyota, like, you just feel like you made a good decision. Even if it's a little bit on the expensive side, you don't feel like you wasted that money. So that's always a great thing when you don't have that buyer's remorse in the back of your head. You probably won't get that if you buy either a Toyota or a Honda product. Most people are very happy with these purchases. That being said, my personal favorite in this category would be like a CX-5 Mazda. The only primary con with that compared to something like this RAV4 is the fact that it's probably not going to get nearly as good fuel economy as the Honda, the Kia products, or this Toyota product. But then again, I don't drive a lot, so it just depends on people's needs. That's another thing. You have to keep in mind the mind frame of somebody who buys something like this. It's going to be a family. Like I already mentioned, dual incomes, it's going to be a family. Safety is going to be a priority, and Toyotas are relatively safe cars. Actually, they receive top safety pick from IIHS usually. This one did not, but the Venza, which this is based upon, did get the top safety pick. I think the reason why this one failed is because they revised the new side impact testing, so this received like an acceptable score. But for the most part, this is a very safe car. You should not have an issue putting a family in here. So again, you put everything together, it's a good all-rounder, and I think that's why the RAV4 sells over 400,000 units per year. So let me know your thoughts if you are a RAV4 owner. I would like to hear how it's held up for you. If you're happy with your purchase, let me know, and I will have the next video on the end screen here. So I'll see you there.